I've always loved dogs. Growing up in suburban Ohio, my whole life revolved around my golden retriever. Daisy, she wore a pink bandana almost every day, was polite, obedient, and had a very strict bedtime. When I moved to the Philippines, I thought I knew what dogs were. I was so wrong. The very first time I stepped out of my condo in Manila, I was greeted by a storm of barks. Not the polite, "Hello, I'm your friendly neighbor" kind of bark. No, this was the "I own the street, and you will acknowledge me" bark. There were 3 of them, all different sizes, standing like generals in the middle of the sidewalk. One of them, a skinny little mutt with fur sticking out everywhere, gave me this long, hard stare. I swear he was evaluating me, judging my shoes, my hair, and my ability to throw a proper stick. And I realized something instantly. These dogs weren't pets. They were CEOs. The CEOs of the barangay road. I laughed because it was so absurd, but also kind of intimidating. Back home, Daisy would never dream of asserting her authority over passing pedestrians. But here, the dogs owned everything. They strutted, lounged, and napped wherever they pleased. Cars and motorcycles would just swerve politely around them like they were tiny, furry traffic controllers. The first time I tried to approach one, a medium-sized brown dog named Toto, by the neighbors, he didn't come running to sniff my hand. He did this slow, calculating walk around me, tail up like a flag of authority. I held out my hand because that's what we do in American dog training videos, and he sniffed me once, like he was conducting a background check, and then just trotted away. That was my introduction to Filipino street dogs. They are independent, fearless, and entirely unconcerned with what you think of them. Daisy's world was ordered and predictable, with schedules for eating, playing, and walking. Here in Manila, I had entered a universe where dogs followed their own schedules, not mine. They made the rules. And then there was the matter of hygiene. Daisy was bathed weekly and smelled like lavender. The Filipino street dogs? Let's just say they had a natural scent, which changed depending on whether they'd recently rolled in dust, garbage, or some unidentified puddle. I learned quickly that a dog's smell here is as much a part of its identity as its bark. You don't wash them. You respect them. One afternoon, I decided to follow a pack of street dogs to try and understand their society. They were a small gang of 5, each with a unique personality. There was Scruff, a scrappy little thing who was fast and unpredictable. Then there was Boss, a large black dog with one ear bent and a scar over his eye. Boss had charisma. Whenever he barked, the others fell in line. Brat, a tan dog with an attitude, was always trying to snake snacks from street vendors. And finally, Shadow, who was quiet, strategic, and always seemed to know where trouble was brewing. Watching them felt like watching a corporate meeting in chaos. Boss would stand in the middle of the street, bark once, and immediately the others would move into position, patrolling their corners. Every passerby, every scooter, every stray cat had to pass their inspection. I couldn't stop laughing. A dog meeting back home would be some polite sniffing and maybe a tail wag. Here, it was serious business. Of course, my American brain still thought I could train them. I crouched down, held out a treat, and said in my most cheerful voice, "Sit." Nothing, nada. Then I tried, "Good boy." To Shadow, he looked at me like I had insulted his entire family and just walked away. I realized Filipino street dogs are not motivated by praise or treats. They are motivated by instinct, territory, and sheer stubbornness. The funniest encounter happened when I tried to cross the street near a small sari-sari store. A large dog was lying right in the middle of the road. I hesitated, assuming he'd move. But he just gave me a long stare, let out a single warning bark, and then lay back down. I had to tiptoe around him like I was sneaking past a sleeping lion. When I told my Filipino friend about it, she laughed and said, "He's just protecting his spot. Don't worry, he won't bite unless you step on him." I was so impressed by his confidence. I started noticing their routines. They walked in shifts. Some slept in the sun near street corners, others prowled the alleys. If a local gave them leftover chicken, they didn't beg. They accepted it politely, assessed the quality, and either ate it or left it. They were discriminating in ways I'd never seen. One rainy afternoon, I was walking through a flooded street, and a pack of these dogs appeared like royalty in a parade. They splashed through the water and jumped over puddles in perfect formation, leading the way. Meanwhile, I was just trying not to trip. It hit me again, these dogs aren't just pets. They are part of the city's infrastructure. I started giving them all nicknames. Boss was still Boss, Shadow remained Shadow, and I added Napoleon for a particularly aggressive little terrier with zero fear. There was also Queen, a fluffy dog who ruled the corner near a bakery, charming passersby and occasionally stealing buns. I documented their antics daily on my social media, and my followers loved it. They couldn't get enough of the fearless dogs of the Philippines. The more time I spent here, the more I realized that in the U.S., dogs are our companions, our little furry children. We dress them in Halloween costumes and complain when they bark too much. But in the Philippines, street dogs are citizens of their own world. They are resourceful with personalities so big they could run for mayor. They're part of the local culture. It's common to see kids feeding the local mutt or neighbors yelling, "Tito, don't eat too much," or magging at Case Calzada, which means be careful on the road. These dogs have reputations, territories, and histories. I even learned about rivalries between packs and alliances that reminded me of high school drama. One night, I was walking back from dinner, and Boss appeared, sitting in the middle of the street like a tiny king on his throne. He stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then, instead of barking, he just gave me a slow nod, like an acknowledgement of respect. I laughed and bowed slightly. I mean, you have to pay homage to the CEO of the barangay road. Even in smaller towns, it was the same story. In Vegan, the dogs were more relaxed, enjoying the cobblestone streets. In Davao, they were more territorial, guarding every corner. Everywhere I went, I saw that Filipino street dogs have rules, codes, and a sense of community that's completely different from the pampered life of an American pet. Sometimes, I wonder if people back home would ever understand this. We fuss over whether our dog's nails are trimmed. Here, dogs worry about survival, relationships, and dominance, and they manage it all with dignity. They are rough, messy, sometimes stinky, but always confident. You can't train them. You can only observe and respect them. It made me reflect on Daisy. She has comfort and love. But these dogs have freedom, independence, and a community that accepts them exactly as they are. They became my teachers. They reminded me that life doesn't have to be managed minute by minute. Sometimes you just walk your path with confidence and claim your space unapologetically. By the end of my first year, I had a ritual. Every morning, I greet Bosch, Shadow, Scruff, Napoleon, and Queen. I started a blog about them, calling it the CEO Dogs of the Philippines. People from all over the world asked for tips on how to approach them. I laughed every time because the real lesson is that these dogs don't need you to teach them anything. They know exactly what they're doing. So every time I walk down a street in Manila, I feel this thrill of respect and amusement. They are my furry Filipino teachers, living life on their own terms. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. American pet dogs are sweet and loyal, but Filipino street dogs? They are unforgettable. They are legends. When I finally went back to Ohio for a visit, Daisy greeted me with her usual hugs. But I couldn't stop thinking about Boss and his crew. I realized I learned something incredible from them. Confidence isn't about obedience or cleanliness. It's about claiming your space, respecting your community, and strutting through life like you own it. Brave, messy, funny, and unapologetically alive. That's the lesson I take with me every day. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more adventures.